All right. So, welcome to DOSE, Department of Solar Efficiency Podcast. I've got my first guest, Addison, here, and we're live. Say hello, Addison. Tell me just a little bit about yourself before we get into some of the details about DOSE.
Sure thing, Chris. Hey everyone, my name is Addison. I am a solar entrepreneur and an engineer. I've been in the solar industry myself for going on 5 years now, and I love it. Ever since I was younger, I wanted to be involved with sustainability and making the world a better place and more equitable for the masses when it comes to energy. And long story short, my path intertwined with Chris, and that's how this opportunity came about. So I'm excited to be here.
So yeah, it's basically divine. How I see it is divine timing, not just us, but everybody in the world. And so there's a lot of historical events coming about. Basically, AI is really kind of paving the way for global changes. And so for me, this is where, because we're both in the solar industry, this is where, we have a particular niche that's really kind of exploded. So for me, there's really one main question, and I got it right here on the board. So let me just read it to you, Addison, and let's see how you answer it. So in a world of global wireless power transmission, how do we design residential solar systems to arbitrage for time of use credits?
That's an interesting one, Chris, because so essentially when we're talking about time of use, right? That's essentially, for those who don't know, that is the different parts of the day that the incentive or the cost for every kilowatt hour of electricity that's utilized is recorded by the utility. So you turn your toaster on at 4 p.m., it's going to run a different rate than if you turned it on at midnight. So that's kind of how that's how the status quo is with the system with the energy electric companies. But when we're talking about uh, wireless energy and how that can intertie with residential systems when it comes to time of use, um, that for me, I'm still curious to see how exactly the billing or anything is going to be set up. Obviously, if we're talking about wireless energy, where I'd like to see the technology go is there is no time of use because every person they're able to turn their own home or maybe they'll have their own system that generates its own form of electricity. So they're not having to be tracked and monitored by some external third party or by some governing body or by some larger grid at play. Um, so that to me, like that's where wireless energy could go. Um,
It's like you're
but
reading.
as
It's like
far
you're reading my mind. Actually, I didn't want to interrupt, but that's pretty much my.
yeah,
That's one of the five tasks that we have here. So basically, smart energy storage for time of use optimization, right? So the whole idea of what do you do with the power and when can you distribute it, basically.
right. Yeah, I mean that's what I'm thinking is that's something I'd like to see. I mean, because time of use rates increase due to demand, and that's essentially what time of use is. And so obviously, as more and more homes are being built, um, I'm out here in Texas, so a lot of people are moving out here. But pretty energy is the main driver for inflation is energy demand and energy prices. And so the more people you have on the grid, then the higher the rates are, i.e., places like California, New York, so forth. So with
So yeah,
wireless
I'm in,
energy,
I'm in California. If I can interrupt, I understand you actually have a deregulated energy market in Texas. Is that correct?
that's true. That is true. But there's still time of use, and that's there's still like different tiers when it comes to the prices of electricity. So long story short, going towards a truly decentralized uh, setup, like this wireless energy concept that we're discussing, I definitely think that it might even do away with time of use. But you know, that's
Yeah.
just like I guess like what I know and from my understanding of it.
Right. So basically, so maybe for everyone listening, to give an example of what I'm actually talking about here is here's a really my cheesy drawing. There's existing
Mhm.
technology out there, but if we imagine a flagpole in your backyard or your side yard, of course, your front yard, we've all seen that, and then a metal sphere at the top, that would probably be the most appropriate way object really that you'd see. obelisks in history, like the pyramids. I'm sure you've heard the news about what's actually underneath the pyramids. This is an example of where I'm coming from, where this technology already exists. It's ancient technology. It's part of the earth, right? So I'm not.
Sure.
We all know about wireless charging. You can put your phone on an item and it's charged wirelessly and transmit. That
Right.
is an example, but which is valid, but that's not exactly the technology I'm talking about. I'm talking about harnessing the energy that's already in the atmosphere, how electricity, how lightning works, basically, and to tap into that,
Yeah.
and not to use that to not for power generation, but for power transmission. So yes, there is a generation component, but it would be like lightning, right? Lightning actually just focuses that energy that's already there. So that's not really what I'm talking about because there you may have
Interesting.
safety concerns, right?
Okay.
So that's really where I'm coming from is how it's transmitted. So to put it to the second question is because really I think this is where we answers a lot of questions is the dynamic grid participation with wireless power markets. How do we actually trade this energy? That's to me that's where this makes sense is in the trading. What do you think about that, Addison?
I mean, definitely with this new technology, or it's not new technology, but definitely when it becomes more commercialized and applicable for the masses, you are going to see resellers and you're going to see a marketplace open up for it. Um, who knows? I mean, it blows my mind already just to think about the many possibilities
Yes.
and
Yeah.
just the different ways that we can transfer and it opens up what I like to coin energy sharing, where
Exactly.
you
Yep.
know peer to peer there's almost a peer to peer network of energy where currently right now um, it's just single flow from the utility to the consumer, and that's it. But what if you could share energy, right? It opens up an entire concept and an entire marketplace, kind of like what Bitcoin did with finance, and just the whole cryptography and peer to peer network. So very
That's
interesting.
that's exactly what I'm talking about is the peer-to-peer, and that's number three. Blockchain and smart contracts for energy transactions. So there's no way we're gonna, you probably aren't even gonna need a rate plan, right? You're just gonna have this constantly being going back and forth. And the transmission doesn't have to be with the utility. This would be with your neighbors, right? So there is some technical questions that I don't have answered, but I'm pretty sure that the size of this device is going to matter when it comes to distance, right? And so the idea is, we don't want this to be an eyesore. We don't want this to be expensive. We don't want this to
True.
be a large thing. But then it would mean that there need to be more of them. So really, it's
That's
going to
right.
be about the neighborhood, right? And then, of course, there can be larger ones further out that are maybe maintained by the utilities, and then that's where you can actually trade energy. Because right now, you can, if you have solar, you do sell your energy with net metering, but
That's right.
it's not a fair trade, right?
No, it's
So
not. It's just directly between you and the grid. An analogous, homologous, to your point about how tall the that station needs to be or that transmitter needs to be. It kind of something similar to it that we could think of for those who are involved in DeFi are nodes on a blockchain, right?
yep,
Processors that can process the amount of transactions in that bit in that data, right? You need either larger ones or you need more of them, right? Because that processing, it's a network that needs to be run and operated. And I see energy following the same footsteps as blockchain technology. You're going to need either if people want to reduce them. Oh, I want maybe in the future, those transmitters aren't the size of flagpoles. Maybe they're portable. Truly like a step in the peer-to-peer direction. Who knows? You're going to need a lot of processors to move that network and handle kind of the load and the demand because everyone needs electricity, right? So, um, but I definitely see like that marketplace opening up. And to your point, the utility could get involved in it the same way. There's large corporations who handle crypto transactions. You can either mine it yourself or you can purchase it through a third party, right?
right.
So energy is it's gonna work the same way. There's gonna be large players that make it more commercially uh, the user experience a little bit more commercialized and I guess easier to understand. But early adopters, I mean, they're gonna be right there from the start and they're gonna see the whole evolution of it. So it's exciting.
Yeah, that's true. So one thing I did want to bring up is the idea of maybe regulators and that this needs to actually be more efficient than the current energy grid for anyone really to do it, for this to take off, because this is a huge political risk, right? This has to be done. Everyone has to be on board and agree that it's a smart thing. And it's only a smart thing if the transmission is more efficient this way than the current system, which, the wire, we already know that there's limits. We already know that the utility has to spend money to maintain the grid, right? And these half your bill, half of it is generation, half of it is distribution, right? So if we can just shift the distribution here, it does need to be more efficient for this to make sense. As
Mhm.
far as I'm tracking, it actually is. That's why I'm
Sure,
making such a big deal about doing this, because we need to get
sure.
the message out that this is not new tech, and it's basically going to come out this year as far as I'm tracking what's going on. So
Okay,
that's why we're trying to get ahead of it and see what we can do to make
right.
this happen. So yeah, pretty much covered all the points. The idea AI focusing, AI
Mhm.
basically doing load balancing and demand forecasting. We already know the utilities already do that already. And then personalized energy contracts, right? So we can actually, this is straight up, like Bitcoin peer-to-peer action, where, if we can get a community to really share the energy, it doesn't have, even though it's global, this operates on a, like a ham radio, this whole system operates as one global system. Really localized producers and consumers can have their smaller markets too. I'm having a hard time figuring out how a global market financially could work doing this, but I think the larger transmitters would be necessary and receivers be necessary to do that. That's where my sense is for that. What do you think?
It's gonna right. And to your point about like how the infrastructure might work, obviously like only time will tell. But I'm gonna be right there along with you when things come out to see kind of the evolution. But I definitely think one way to maybe think about it would be kind of like how a current cellular network works, right? So everyone has like their own Wi-Fi, right? Their own modem in their own house, right? But that only covers a certain range. Whereas, a larger telephone a large telephone structure or telephone pole, that broadcasts the one that's hundreds of feet tall. Those are owned and operated by the cellular companies themselves. So that's probably going to be kind of that's probably one way it might take form is everyone kind of has their own um, network or their own, I guess, range or roaming or however you want to describe it. But, people can I guess, oscillate back and forth between, a public network and private network.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
another thing,
Go ahead.
yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Well, I was just going to
I
say
was,
that there's going to be competition with the utility. There's no competition, right? You're in a deregulated
yeah,
market, yes, but in where I'm in California, no competition. You need power, you have one utility, and that's it, right? And so there's a commission. They're supposed to not build you on the pricing. They're supposed to keep it where it's fair pricing, but it's
right,
you have actually there's actually it's not fair. Like there's no choice in the matter. Now you're going to have
exactly.
a choice, right? Even with solar
Mhm.
now, yeah, you can sell it back to the utility, and a lot of people have solar and they basically have no bill because they bought solar, but you're still totally dependent on the utility paying you a fair cut of,
That's right.
of what your power is. And now that's not the
That's
case.
right.
As long as these systems are more efficient in the transmission than the power, the
Mhm.
copper lines that we have, then it should work. Go ahead.
Right. And so we were just talking right there about how the technical infrastructure might work. But something I also want to touch on on the other side of the coin is you mentioned how does the financial and the economic work?
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, the main reason why people go solar, they might not give two craps about saving the environment, but they're interested in the financial model
Right.
and, selling their power and getting something off of their roof, just being there. So, the financial model is going to be a huge incentive for a lot of people to enter in this market. And I definitely think that, you know, maybe on a philanthropic perspective, for example, if a region just got hit by a natural disaster um, and everything energy is on this blockchain and being tracked, everyone can see that I sent, um, I don't know, 500 kilowatt hours of electricity to some desolate third world country, and like now like I can claim that on my taxes. I don't know, like it's honestly endless, like the use cases. or it could just be as small as, hey, I need to charge I'm about to go camping. Hey man, can you send me 100 kilowatt hours? Can you send me 100 kilowatts? It could peer to peer. It could be philanthropic. It can be just leisurely. It could be business to business. You know, so it's really endless. And I do think on a global scale, the same way finance is on a global scale. I mean, you look at decentralized finance; it's 24/7. No, it doesn't stop for weekends. It doesn't stop for holidays. Um, it doesn't stop at night. So you're going to see like an energy sharing on a global scale 24/7. Um, and it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see the same way decentralized finance is transforming money and the way that business is being done. This is going to transform the way people do business as well, but also live and breathe and operate. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. They're the only, I don't see like that much of a upfront cost issue. Maybe there's loans and leases associated with it. The only thing that I do see technically, as far as I understand how this probably needs to work, is that as far as it goes above, it needs to go below underground. And so there will be a drilling component. I mean, I'm talking, we already do that now where we have grounding rods, right? So if you have solar right now, you may have you would, well, unless your home needs to be grounded. So you might have experience having a grounding rod go 6 feet down, just a wrought iron stick, basically. Maybe they drilled into your concrete on your sidewalk, on your side path to do it. And so it's kind of an eyesore. But it probably would need to be something like that, but in the in the size of whatever's above, so below. And so, because part of the way the whole system actually works is you're pulling the energy out from the atmosphere. That's where the electricity is, and so it needs to be grounded for the circuit to actually work, right? And that's why
Okay.
this is right. This is basically how it'll work. So there is that aspect. So it's kind of a home improvement project, just like solar. And so the question is, we how being in engineering and solar industry, how can we make this product right now? I mean, I know the second that there's companies that have already has patents, and there have been classified. Unfortunately, patents can be classified, and now a lot of stuff is being unclassified, and so that way we can actually start working towards it. So, I'm sure there's a lot of companies that will pick up right away on this, but we need to actually talk about it because there's a political barrier here, and that's the whole reason why I'm doing this. Because as far as I'm tracking, the tech is not the hard part. It's not that. It's us. It's politics. It's greed, right? Because this is based on no wars on earth is really the only way I can see this working, because there can be interference to stop it. So I see that coming maybe probably this year. And that's why I'm pushing so hard. What do you think, Addison?
Yeah. Definitely, like I said again, I forget where I saw it, but energy is once again the driver of inflation. And if you can make energy decentralized, I mean, who knows, like the issues that that'll knock out and take care of worldwide on a macro scale, or issues it might cause. I don't know. But I definitely think it is liberating that if people can at least generate their own electricity, or it can be truly peer to peer, they don't have to go through a larger utility, then I definitely think that there's some value in that. Um, and then,
So
yeah, I mean, how can we make this now? I don't know.
so
That's something I have to work on.
Right. So there is one thing that's why we got the whiteboard here. I just wrote 0 point energy. Okay.
Okay.
There is 0 point energy, right? This is where energy can be pulled out from the vacuum of space, from the vacuum of the ether of space time. And so this is definitely something, where we don't want to go conspiratorial. That's why I'm keeping it, with DOSE,
Sure.
Department of Solar Efficiency. But this is where we have free energy. So what I'm talking about here is not free energy. This is this is very close to it, right? This is just using what already exists, like ham radios, right, where you can bounce a radio signal around the world, and you have a ham radio operator, an amateur radio operator, or well, not always amateur, obviously.
Hmm.
It's used in all
Hmm.
sorts of communications. It's just bouncing that signal off the atmosphere, and this is the same thing. So 0 point energy is free energy. Okay, so arguably, you know, that already exists. That's just a physics problem, and of course, politics is in the way of that too. But there is a technical limitation as well. So there is this threshold between there is another level where the energy we don't need solar, we don't need power
Okay.
plants, right?
That's
We do
right.
need a device, right? And there will need to be an ignition source, right? And so that's the next step. So I guess where I'm coming from is this intermediary step where, again, it's not a technical problem, right? It's a political one. This is more, the 0 point is somewhat more of a technical problem, but arguably also exists. So I just wanted to throw that out there because a lot of
Okay.
people maybe are confused that I'm actually talking about 0 point energy when I'm not. Oh, what do you think about 0 point energy?
Yeah. It's an interesting concept, and like you were kind of getting at, just pulling the energy out of the atmosphere. I mean, I like to see it. I would definitely like to see it.
Yeah.
So,
Awesome. Well, I think that probably wraps it up. Addison, do you have anywhere you want everyone to, if they want to find you, is there a place that they can go and look you up or?
oh, sure, I appreciate that. Yeah. Everyone, you can find me on LinkedIn, Addison Houston. Um, and every now and then I do post on YouTube as well, like my man Chris. So, Addison Houston.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
LinkedIn,
yeah. So,
I think now with the new economic trend, that LinkedIn is somehow really picked up, and now is kind of, is the new way of networking, and YouTube is the way to get information. So,
that's
you're
right.
all going to be seeing this on YouTube. You can always contact me. I do sell solar. I am one of the only solar advisors that does charge a $750 retainer fee, which I refund after PTO, because where money goes, energy flows. And this is like a big thing because solar projects, with all the companies going bankrupt, has gotten completely out of control. And I got to tell you, this is the way to hedge against that because things are chaos right now, and it's probably going to be like that for the foreseeable future.
Right.
So, with that, do you have any last statements you want to make, Addison?
No, Chris, again, thanks for having me, man. I'm gonna be right here alongside you in the trenches, advocating for 0 point, and excited to see where the future takes us. And yeah, I'm along for the ride. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, Addison. And I'll see everybody in the next one.